Okay, I did find over there a couple of visual aids. I am not taking these home for lunch. They're going to be visual aids. And thank you to the Senior Center for the coffee this morning. It is really good. Okay, so some goals and objectives. We'll talk about dementia and Alzheimer's disease, how it impacts our brain and body, how it creates communication challenges and behavioral changes. You can take the word clientele out. Helpful strategies for working with friends, families, and acquaintances with dementia. Okay, so some numbers. 2/3 of those with Alzheimer's are women. 2/3. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia. There are more than 6 million Americans currently living with Alzheimer's, not as a caregiver, but with the disease. In 2022, which is the last year the numbers were calculated, Alzheimer's and other dementias cost the United States $321 billion with a B. By 2050, these costs could rise to more than $952 billion.
Is that the population will triple, or just the disease will triple?
So the incidence keeps going up, and the number of people at higher ages keeps going up. One of the significant risks of longevity is developing Alzheimer's or another dementia. In many cases, we would die of something else before the dementia got to a clinical and symptomatic level. It was there, but it was not manifest. It wasn't symptomatic. We'll talk about some of the diseases too. Paul and I were talking a little bit earlier. COVID-19 was a catastrophe for seniors. There was a 17% increase in Alzheimer's and dementia deaths during COVID. I'm convinced one of the reasons for that is because there was less social supports. People were isolated, less social supports, which is clearly accelerates the disease progression. So when I introduced myself, I did not introduce myself as a physician or a lawyer. So this is all personal experience that I'm talking. I have 18 years of personal experience at Sunrise. I've seen a lot of stories. There's not a lot of things that haven't been, oh wow. At 18 years, it's like, well, I remember. Do you remember Britt? Yeah. He took a knife, a butter knife from the dining room, and he started to disassemble his window so he could get out. Now this was an engineer, a colonel in the Air Force at NORAD. Fortunately, somebody heard him drop something and we were able to figure it out. But not a physician or lawyer. I will.
Peter, go back to that number that I talked about.
Here?
The top one. Does that mean the costs are going to go up, triple in cost, or what would be the number of people that are going to come down? In other words, it's not going to follow the population. The population in the U.S. won't triple in the next 25 years.
No, but the incidence of dementias will increase. One, because we're living longer and the biggest predictor of developing a dementia is increasing age. Not only are people living longer, there are more people in the baby boomer cohort that we haven't seen come through society yet. So it's not only the volume of people, it's the volume of people that are going to live longer. There are some other complicating factors too, why we're seeing more incidents. We'll get to those. So just so you know, I'll be referring to, this is not very fancy, but my presentation is in here. And what I also have in here is a really good research document done by the Alzheimer's Association that I can refer to, including about 600 footnotes as references to scientific journals. So I won't make anything up. I'll tell you if I don't know, but I will be referring to this because there's a lot of good information. And speaking of good information, if there's one thing that you remember today, just one thing, remember alz.org. alz.org. That's the website for the Alzheimer's Association. You can get their 800 number. I'll put it up on the screen at the end. They have 24/7 caregiver support, more resources than you can, I mean, particularly if you go off to the links, more resources than you can read in a lifetime. One of the challenges with dementias is that there's so much research and there's so much new information going on that even the neurologists can't keep up. They've got to get very narrow and specific. All right, here, so our chapter is Massachusetts and New Hampshire. The chapter that out of the Worcester office, but headquartered, I think, in still in Waltham. Yeah. So some numbers here, and I hope you can see them. But this was as of 2019. About 1,700 deaths from Alzheimer's disease in Massachusetts, about 500 in New Hampshire. A number that really, in New Hampshire, between 2020 and 25, it's expected to go, the incidence of Alzheimer's with people 65 years and older is projected to increase 23%. In Massachusetts, same time period, 15%. And there's some reasons for those differences. One of the reasons is that in New Hampshire, in the entire state of New Hampshire, there's only 33 geriatricians. A geriatrician is a physician who specializes in senior health, senior medicine, okay? Just like we might have an emergency department doctor that specializes in emergency medicine, or a nephrologist that specializes in kidneys, gerontologists specialize in seniors. 33 in the entire state of New Hampshire. 214 in Massachusetts. And I think, oh, that's good, we've got a lot. Well, we don't really, because if you divide it by the population, it's still not very many. But there is there are some significant challenges in our healthcare system, as we all know. They are particularly prevalent in seniors. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about Paul's question regarding dementia and Alzheimer's. Dementia is an umbrella term. Alzheimer's is a significant, think of dementia as a pie, okay? And we're going to cut up the pie. Within the dementia pie, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia that is about half of the pie. So it's the most prevalent type of dementia. I can give you some numbers. Depending on the research, it's somewhere between 40 and 65% of dementia is diagnosed as Alzheimer's type. There are other types. There is cerebrovascular, problems with the blood vessels in the brain. I found that very closely linked to people with coronary artery disease. Remember, healthy heart, healthy brain. Blood vessels are the same. There's other types, including Parkinson's type dementia, and I won't go into all of the different types. So, some age-related changes compared to dementia-related changes. Essentially, it is related to what impacts one's daily activities, what impacts their independence. Okay? Age-related changes, notes and memory changes are successful. Brandon and I were talking earlier, my calendar went off, it comes up on my watch, and I go, oh, I'm supposed to be at the senior center in 15 minutes, right? Not only do we put things in our calendar, we set a reminder. It's a memory crutch, right? It's a memory crutch. I'd like to think, in my case, it's not that my memory is going away, it's just that my calendar's kind of full and I don't want to miss something. But we have those memory aids and they're successful. With dementia, those things don't work anymore. They're not enough. So think of it as, yes, it's an unfortunate fact of life that as we age, our brains atrophy, just like our muscles. If you don't use your skeletal muscles, they're going to atrophy. They're going to wither. The same thing with your brain. All of our brains are smaller than they were when we were 25. We can do what we can to help that. We can exercise them. But part of that is the process of normal aging, right? Look at your hands. Go ahead, look at the back of your hands. Do they look like the hands of a 20-year-old? No. No, right? Things are going on inside too. That's normal. But dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia diseases such as Alzheimer's, everything, all of the other organ systems in your body working fine, Alzheimer's is ultimately a fatal disease. Now, not everybody with Alzheimer's dies of Alzheimer's. Something could get you in ahead of time. You could have a heart attack, you could have a stroke, you could get run over by a MART bus. If I say it, it won't happen. We already talked about how many Americans are living with Alzheimer's. That number is probably closer to 7 million now. And 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia. That may not be their cause of death, but they are carrying it around as a diagnosis. And as I said, it is not a part of normal aging. A healthy brain and advanced Alzheimer's, you can see the difference. You can see the difference. The brain shrinks.
Peter, are you going to discuss medical breakthroughs, possibility to do it?
We're going to talk about prevention and treatment. It's not really in this, but we will talk about it.
Does it affect one specific part of the brain or the brain overall? That looks like it's overall.
It is, so with advanced or profound dementia, it affects the entire brain. But it starts in our memory section of our brain. memory, speech, and decision making. That's why we notice the memory go first with a dementia or an Alzheimer's patient. It's the memory that we notice that goes first. But yeah, it does eventually affect the entire brain. So in this here, we may have somebody that originally had memory issues, eventually lost their ability to speak because it affected the speech center of their brain, and now has affected the balance part of their brain, so they can't walk independently anymore without falling, and may even affect the parts of the brain that control our swallowing. So it gets difficult for them to eat, and they may have an aspiration pneumonia, particles of food going down the trachea instead of the esophagus, and stuff going into the lungs causing pneumonias. So it is progressive with different parts of the brain.
Does it cause Parkinson's, or how does Parkinson's, can you have both, in other words?
You can have both. And it's being diagnosed with Parkinson's is very closely linked with being diagnosed with dementia. There are some diagnoses or conditions that wickedly predispose somebody to dementia. Probably the biggest one is Down syndrome, trisomy of chromosome 21. Someone with Down syndrome is born with 3 chromosomes, number 21, instead of the 2 that normally happen. And I forget the number. There's probably about by the age of 65, I think there's about an 80% chance they're going to have dementia. Okay, so some of the changes: short and long-term memory loss, repetitive speech and questions, slower information processing speed, they don't understand the disease, they think they're fine, impaired reasoning and judgment, inability to regulate a socially appropriate behavior, worse than just standing in the checkout line at Market Basket before Christmas, worse than our normal issues there. Sensory perception challenges, mood and personality changes. The floor before this, and congratulations on your new floor, the floor before this, I remember having big black squares. Those, for someone with dementia, appear to be holes. If you have somebody with dementia with a floor like that, they may actually freeze where you can see them trying to walk around them, because they don't understand. They just see that big black spot and they think it's a hole. So brain changes. People have lots of problems. I won't go through all of it. Here, this is what I was talking about right there. So without divulging any confidences, if you feel comfortable, raise your hand if you know of a family member, a friend, a neighbor, somebody that has or is currently or has experienced dementia. Look around. Look around. Yeah. This legal and financial decisions, sharing a PIN number with a stranger. We probably have all heard that scams increase around the holidays, and scams with seniors in particular. I have an extended family member that was scammed out of $80,000 in cash. And this is somebody without dementia. So be careful. But it's not just our brain, it's our body, because our brain controls our body, like we were talking about with swallowing. The swallowing, we do it without even thinking, right? It's automatic. It's sort of like a heartbeat. It's just there. We learned over it. We had instinct to begin with, and we learned over a period of time how to eat and drink safely. Without the brain controlling that, because it doesn't happen on its own. The brain controls that. Without the brain controlling that, it doesn't work. All of these things are controlled by the brain. And without a healthy brain, we don't have these body tasks working appropriately. Communication is either expressive or receptive, right? Information coming in gets processed, information going back up. And not just verbal information, right? Body language, tone of voice, pace, all of that. This really gets very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. Who's ever invented a new word? Anyone ever invent a new word? Because you couldn't, it's like, is that a real word? I don't know. We call it word salad. It's just, it's like we're hybridizing broccoli and cauliflower, and we make up a new word, make up a new vegetable. We talked a little bit about nonverbal communication. Very important in interacting with people with dementia. Generally, 90% of communication is nonverbal, and it's at least that much for people with dementia, because they need to feel safe, they need to feel valued, they need to feel like they have some self-esteem. We don't talk to them like children, but we do slow down. And we don't give them multi-step instructions. Every morning at sunrise, our reminiscence residents bake. And that what they bake that morning becomes one of the choices for lunch, for dessert. Right? Makes them feel good about themselves. They just have a good experience. They're not doing it by themselves. They're somebody with them. But one step at a time, one step at a time. No multi-step directions, no multi-step questions, one thing at a time. Slow down. Never come up behind somebody with a dementia and put your hand on their shoulder. You're gonna scare them. Right? Eye level, pace with them. There's a whole bunch of, if you look up dementia validation techniques online, you'll see the program that we use, that many dementia providers use. And it's really helping people to join, it's getting the caregivers to join their journey. One of the things I see the most with caregivers, because it's usually a husband and a wife, usually. One of them has dementia and one does not. And the one without is becoming the caregiver. Now guess what? The caregiver isn't 20 anymore either. They're carrying around some medical baggage, right? They may have heart disease, they may have diabetes, orthopedic issues, who knows? But by caring for that spouse, they're burning the candle at both ends. Chances are the caregiver dies first. The caregiver dies first. Two things I want to mention about caregivers and a little bit of the social aspect of this is I see a lot of caregivers trying to reorientate their spouse to reality. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. They believe what they believe. That black spot on the floor, I can put my foot on it, I can stand on it, and I can say, see, Barbara, it's fine. It's not a hole, you're not gonna fall in. Oh no, it's different for you. I believe it and it's true. Okay? All right. The other thing I want to mention off topic right now is the social part of being diagnosed with dementia and with a caregiver. There is a terrible, terrible stigma that exists in our society against people diagnosed with a dementia. It used to be that way with cancer. We got past that. They're like, okay, you got cancer. I feel bad for you, that sucks.
We understand that.
Right? People still hide the dementia. People still don't want to, none of us want to be diagnosed with dementia. But isn't it better to know what's going on in your body than that? Unless you're the ostrich with your head in the sand. But I've had people not move into a memory care for the specific reason we do not want anyone to know that X has dementia. It's not their fault. What is the social stigma? We got past it with cancer, all kinds of cancers. People go around, hey, I got prostate cancer. You look okay to me. I don't really understand it, but that's one of the things that the Alzheimer's Association is working towards, removing that stigma. So please be aware of all of the communication strategies if you're talking with someone with dementia.
So Peter, is your memory unit filled?
If it's not today, it will be tomorrow.
So are people afraid of putting somebody in a memory unit? Or if there's lack of space, worried about where they may go as an alternative?
We can talk more about the options of and why people move to a memory care provider or not. One of the primary, we'll talk about that, but I'll try to remember that. So successful interactions with people with dementia, approach from the front, identify yourself. One of the things that I really like in Sterling now is if you're a staff at the senior center or at the library, they're now wearing name tags. Because how many times do somebody walk up to us and say, Barbara, how are you? Lyman, how are you? And you're like, what is his name? Keep talking. Help, the things are going wee in there. The little neurons are trying to get organized. But the name tag helps. So identify yourself. And unfortunately, people with moderate to severe dementia no longer recognize their families sometimes. So, Peter, it's Nathaniel, your son. Oh yeah, okay. Great. Good to see you. Just good communication strategies. Be open and relaxed, eye contact, calm, show you're interested, good eye contact. I have found that humor and smiles, whatever that part of our brain seems to be protected, even someone with some pretty moderate to severe dementia, there's some humor in there. Maybe it's like right next to the memory, the music section of our brain, because music is one of the last things to go. Somebody that's nonverbal, my team puts on Frank Sinatra, all the words come out. They're singing along with the song. I mean, for me, it'll probably be, I don't know, Stairway to Heaven. Right? I may not remember all the words, but I'll remember that high school dance where we just went in circles. All right. Some other helpful communication strategies: slow and clear, one-step directions, one question at a time, allow time for a response, help with a guess, a suggestion, or use a prop, rephrase your question, write things down. But write things down I haven't found all that effective. And I am going to send this presentation to Matt at Sterling Cable. So if you want to see the presentation, it'll be there as a PDF, I think. So what are we going to see for behavioral challenges? All behavior is a way of communicating. Remember that. The behaviors that are exhibited are a method of communication.
I found sign language too. I used a lot of signs with Charlie because he couldn't communicate.
Right.
So we kind of developed a sign.
Yeah, you can, I mean, you're probably not using authentic American Sign Language.
Our language.
Yes, especially with a spouse that you've been together for a long time and you were finishing each other's sentences. Whatever works, but slow down, take your time, and don't get frustrated. The frustration is not good for the caregiver, and it doesn't help that interaction. Remember, we need to join their journey and their reality. It's not about us, it's about them. Rummaging, a lot of wandering. And that's probably one of the biggest risks to someone with dementia is they wander off and they get lost. They may have a purpose. But they have, into their purpose, they forget what the purpose is, and then they forget how to get back. And really, really bad things can happen. Really, really bad things can happen. And that's why a special care unit in Massachusetts is locked. It's up to the operator, it's up to the executive director who gets the code. I have some colleagues in central Massachusetts, they give the code to families. I don't. Because you don't know who the residents in that memory care are. And I have residents at Sunrise right now that look as healthy as anyone in this room. And in the moment, can have a great conversation. I can sit down with them. Arthur, how are you? I'm Peter. We chat for a few minutes. I go away, I come back. Arthur says, who are you? But in the moment, they could follow that family member right out the door. And I like to sleep at night. I'm not going to do that. But wandering is a really, really tough thing. Rummaging or searching, I affectionately call them my shoppers. For those of you with Netflix, there's a great little series called A Man on the Inside. And it's Ted Danzig, the guy that was in Cheers is the bartender. He does all the cell phone commercials now. He is the man on the inside. I won't tell you any more about it, but it is stunningly accurate for assisted living and memory care. It's set in San Francisco. They hide things, they lose things because there is a little bit of paranoia that develops. And they can have hallucinations and delusions, particularly around some types of dementia diagnoses like frontotemporal, Lewy body disease, very high incidence of hallucinations, and Parkinson's. Not so much Alzheimer's. So some of the causes. Somebody's rummaging in their purse because she might be confused. Talking and no one is there. Somebody might be hallucinating. But every behavior is an attempt at communication. I had a resident once that we couldn't figure out what was going on. We thought he was being hypersexual because he kept going around trying to unzip his pants. Wait a minute, maybe he just needs to go to the bathroom. Eureka. He couldn't communicate the need to go to the bathroom. People were like, oh my God, what's going on? Take him to the bathroom, help him and see if that, yeah, he's good. He's not unzipping his pants anymore. Making some connections. Don't try to correct or argue. Join their journey, get in their reality. Try not to use the word no. What if we did this instead? You know, that person that wants to go out right now in a t-shirt and shorts with their flip-flops on. Probably not a good idea. What if we were to do this instead? A dementia-friendly environment. Good lighting, glare is tough, reflective surfaces are tough. Remove clutter. Back in 2012, I told you I have 2 special care units. Back in 2012, I actually took a wing of my assisted living and converted it into memory care. That was previously assisted living, so it had a kitchenette. They were studios and 1-bedroom apartments. We obviously took the microwaves out, and in many cases the refrigerators. They all have their private bathrooms, so a sink and things like that really aren't an issue. But the point is that some of those 1-bedroom apartments are 700, 800 square feet. They're great for couples, where I have one that with dementia, the other one without, but they want to stay together. The one without dementia can come and go, knowing that their spouse is going to be all set, don't have to worry, right? So it's great for couples. But one person in an 800 square foot apartment, it's overwhelming to them. The smaller the space, the less stuff, the better. Too much stimulation is bad. Make pathways clear and easy to see. If there's signage, it should be clear and concise. Symbols are helpful. Pictures, like icons. We have some apartments where I've painted the wall behind the toilet a different color because it's a visual cue. And then for people that no longer works for, we put a piece of paper and it says toilet on it. They can see the toilet, so putting a picture isn't helpful, but the word they may recognize. So the communication by various methods, words, pictures, so forth. I'm not going to talk about the meeting, and I'm not going to talk about the phone. That's more for businesses. So some of the programs and services from the Alzheimer's Association are up there. Like I said, if you remember one thing, alz.org. And that is your gateway to all types of information, including live caregiver support. It's a great organization. Let me put in a couple of plugs for the association. So about 95% of the money that we raise goes directly towards direct services. There's always some overhead for the paid staff in any organization like this. The Worcester County Walk, out of the 600 walks in the United States, the Worcester County Walk is consistently in the top 25 for funds raised. So if you've contributed, thank you. If you'd like to, see me. I'm happy to take your money on behalf of the association. I've been on the walk committee for the 18 years I've been at Sunrise. I'm trailing off on that. They asked me to join their executive leadership team and go around and try to get some bigger donors and hook them and bring them in. Thank you all. Thank you.
Next one.